Hello, I'm here with the digital experience team, and we're going to have a discussion about the www-gitlab-com website, specifically the repository, kind of some dev things, how it's built, kind of just an open conversation. We have some new team members, and we're just getting everyone in the loop. Oh, we have an agenda here. So Javier, you have the first thing on it we wanted to go over.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So I'm trying to add a site to the sites directory, and this is related to our design system work. And I've noticed that there was something related to that was data/monorepo.yaml. So I was wondering if you knew anything in particular about that.
Yeah, the monorepo. lots of things with that. I made a direct note in your MR there, and that links to a file where I crudely just ignored the extra slipper site that we're putting in there. That's
Okay.
not elegant, not the way we should move forward, but
For now.
yeah, just to get it working. As you can see, there's new pipeline errors because of that. So it's kind of a process. You break one thing and work on
Okay.
the next thing.
Sounds good.
For the monorepo, I linked to the docs there. It's in our repository, the docs directory. And that's the best place to start to understand the philosophy behind it. Chad Woolley was the one who did the initial iteration of all of that code. And underneath that, I linked to the www-gitlab-com monorepo refactor epic. And that's been open for a few months. It's really big, and you can start to get some of the background information on it.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Lots there. We're still working on making it good. One of the things I noticed with the slippers site is our monorepo is structured for middleman sites right now. And so we're adding a new site that isn't middleman. So that's going to require some adjusting to that custom code.
Yeah, sounds fun.
Lots of edge cases. Okay, next thing. I think you have the next one.
Oh, so I just thought we would start with what is Webpack and how did you start learning Webpack? I think that's like a good place to start.
Yeah.
Considering I don't know where all of our backgrounds lie, but I just did a quick Google search and I've heard of Webpack being thrown around before, and like what it's used for. But yeah, I thought we would all start there to have like a shared understanding and make sure we're all on the same page.
Has anyone else worked with Webpack here? Go, Tyler. Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, Webpack is, so I think like the word that usually describes it, you think of it as a bundler, JavaScript bundler, although it does much more than that. And I think that's probably like one of the biggest things with Webpack, is that it is like a Swiss Army knife tool that will do many things for you out of the box. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges in like learning to use it, because it does so many things. It's hard to know like at any one time what it's doing, like, holistically. And so like the most useful thing, so I come from like a Rails background, which shares a lot of things in common with Middleman. But recently Rails has adopted Webpack and the Webpacker gem. And like sort of the primary goal for that with Rails, and this is kind of like what Webpack does, is allow developers to write what people refer to as like modern JavaScript, although I think that's sort of a like loaded term, but like, the kind of JavaScript that you would see on Twitter, on like dev Twitter in 2020, but ES6 and above, sort of like that kind of style of JavaScript. Write it that way and have it compile and be bundled up so that any browser can run it. And that's the job of Webpack, is it brings it all together, bundles it up, puts it in one place, and like helps you manage distributing that out to older browsers, a diversity of browsers. And then Webpack also does a ton of other stuff too. You can use it for assets as well. You can use it for like images. You can use it for style sheets. You can use it to like configure your like Babel plugins and I think your post CSS plugins, like all of these like this like massive sprawling tool chain that like modern front end web development is. Like Webpack kind of brings it all together, but I think that also makes it really challenging to understand in one go. And the final thing that I think about with Webpack is like, to me, it's sort of like a set it and forget it kind of thing. I don't know, since this is day 3 for me and I don't have the context of this project, I don't know where GitLab is with like the Webpack config, but like in my previous roles and projects, basically it's like, grab a Webpack config. Does it work? Awesome, cool. Don't think about it ever again. So I think like set it and forget it is like, if you're thinking about Webpack day to day and you're like not specifically doing Webpack iteration, I would probably say like stop and like don't worry about it. You know, like if it's working, it's good.
Got anything you want to add to it, Sammy?
You covered almost everything that I would have loved to say. Because when I come from a JavaScript background, so you always have a lot to do and you're always looking for the way to do it in the easiest way. So for me, Webpack came handy when I was trying to, maybe I'm writing with Sass and I need to compile it to CSS. So how do you do that? So Webpack enables you to automate all this kind of stuff. Like you have a lot of images, you want to reduce file size. So you can use Webpack to always do that in the back end and you don't have to worry about a thing. So all you have to do is just structure what comes first, then what comes next. So like Tyler said, it's just a lot of different stuff. So you can pick and choose whatever you want, bundle it together and just automate stuff. So that's how I can also explain Webpack, which you also do. Yeah. Maybe Lauren asked me that.
I am still learning Webpack. I come from grunt and gulp world. That made sense to me. Webpack's still learning.
I think for me, the kind of key things are, you know, if I were to TLDR, is it allows you to optimize. Basically, you can optimize delivery of assets. You can optimize developer experience by saying include this rather than copy paste. You know, it reuses and keeps code clean. It allows you to optimize by pulling in other resources from other, you know, basically pre-built things rather than, you know, having to reinvent the wheel again. So a lot of optimization.
And we are adding Webpack to the www repo. It's the first iteration where we just do the style sheets is done. Now we're adding the JavaScripts. We're not really bundling anything. So it's a really crude implementation. Then we're gonna be migrating, we have a roll-up pipeline, which roll-up is very similar to Webpack. And so we're gonna migrate that out into Webpack and kind of get all into one external asset pipeline. Lots going on there. So I linked to an MR there so you can see the crude JavaScript implementation that is in flight, working on it. Feel free to add anything. Yeah.
There's another thing about Webpack that I think is important that I always forget because I just like, it's like a given for me when I use it. But the like hot reloading is like something it gives you. So like Webpack can serve up basically like its own asset server for you. So like if you're running like a local server of the site, you can configure Webpack to also run a separate local server, but that only looks and like listens for changes on the asset files. And so if you're like, and so this is really great if you're like playing around with styles or if you're playing around with like site-wide JavaScript and that sort of stuff. So you can get like really fast, like hot reloading out of it. And you don't need to use, and like for me with Rails, like I had to install like a couple extra gems and then like hook up those gems to like another like server, like to get like hot reloading was really hard. And like these days, like Rails 5.2 and onwards, Webpack dev server just like runs and like does the thing. So I think, I don't know where we're at with like the config here, but yeah, I think eventually that's going to make a huge difference. Yeah. So that's not to be ignored with Webpack.
We needed that yesterday. I'm working with the site locally right now. You know, you make one change, the whole thing.
It builds, it just builds up.
Like when you eat refresh, just go downstairs and grab a coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, when you make little CSS changes and JavaScript changes, it's like, oh, so like 90% of what we do, it sounds like.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so that, yeah, we're gonna put that in the epic. Absolutely. Okay, moving on. Webpack's awesome. Moving on. GitLab Runner. This is something really cool that allows you to run the CI/CD, CI jobs locally. I used it when I first started and started working with the GitLab CI file, and it allows you to really test and debug all those jobs locally versus pushing something up and then seeing that your pipeline's broken, which is something we're all going to deal with a lot. So it's great to do all that locally. Right now, it
And you also get,
yeah. Go.
I was just going to say, you also get improved error messaging when you do it locally, because you can kind of stop it when you need to, and clear other parts of the terminal and search the log and stuff, rather than just this long scrolling list that you get on the website interface.
Yeah.
So this is like a duplication of the GitLab CI/CD, but like a local version of it, sort of thing. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's a separate setup. Got to run through that. Really powerful. Highly recommend everyone get that set up.
Another thing I just thought of too is when you look at that file, it gives you a better idea of what's going on in the pipeline interface that you might not see in GitLab itself. So reading that, you get to see the exact commands that are being output in Bash, while the thing is running.
Awesome.
Something I'm going to add into here is that let's make an issue for fixing this, because when I try to run on the www repo right now, I'm getting some obscure errors as to why GitLab Runner won't work with that repo. But I haven't had time to look at that. So instead of using GitLab Runner, I've just been running rake commands locally. And it's kind of a workaround, because a lot of times when you push changes up, that can be one CI job that fails frequently. And it's an easy way to check specific linting commands locally. So I linked to the file where all these rake tasks are listed, which is libtasks lint rake. And you can see we've got 20 or so. That's a cool little shortcut I like to use to run specific ones. And the docs directory. Take a look at that docs directory and feel free to add anything to it as you're working with the repo. Anything else you guys want to add?
Oh, this was so useful, actually. I didn't know half of these things existed, so thank you.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. Here you go.